Well, greetings and welcome to today's educational program, part 2 of our 3 Vital Questions series, How Are You Relating? Shifting Drama to Empowerment by Anne-Marie Flynn. This is your moderator, Doug Wood, with ASQ's Quality Management Division. So today we have the pleasure of hearing again from Anne-Marie Flynn in the second part. Please join me in welcoming her. Anne-Marie Flynn is the president and founder of Champion Foundational Change Agency, which is the gold standard in workplace excellence, a professional consultant, personal and professional development expert in organizational and human performance. Anne-Marie demonstrates a spark for storytelling and a knack for normalizing fear and adversity. Champion Foundational Change Agency has served thousands of individuals, nonprofits, and cutting-edge businesses throughout North America, tailoring impactful workshops, professional development, and customized strategies to create a fulfilling relationship with self and profitable and productive value within the workplace. Anne-Marie's dream of expanding the potential of workplace well-being finally came to a reality when in 2018 she requested and accepted an early retirement from her 29-year career with a Fortune 100 company. She knew that in order to live her life purpose, she needed to step outside her comfort zone of a long and successful career and to take the leap into the unknown of her own business. Her faith and her life purpose provided the backbone and assurance that she would be a success. Her many credentials include Certified Workplace Wellness Ambassador, Certified 3BQ Facilitator, Professional Leadership Development and Coactive Coach, Certified Nutritional Coach, Certified Corporate Athlete Facilitator, Bachelor of Commerce graduate from Dalhousie University, Vice President of a nonprofit organization. She's a top-ranked international athlete. She's Atlantic Canada's first female military scuba diver. She's a mom and a business owner. So Anne-Marie embodies a passion for making a difference in the lives of people from all walks of life to embrace and empower physical, mental, emotional, and intentional well-being. So without any more ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Anne-Marie Flynn. Anne-Marie, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Doug, and welcome everybody to part 2 of this 3-part series of, I was going to say champion yourself to wellness, because that's what I was just doing this morning, but of the 3 vital questions. So tonight's talk is all going to be on question 2, how are you relating? So this is the agenda for this evening's talk. So this talk is really divided into 3 main components. Number 1, I'll do a quick overview on engagement and how the pandemic has affected our internal health. And then the second part of the talk, or number 2 of the talk, will be on question number 2, how are you relating from the 3 vital questions? And then the third part of the series, or this talk, we're going to talk about how to shift your mindset to that of a champion mindset. Now, as usual for all of my talks, I jam-pack a lot of information in a very short period of time. So I hope that the information that I do have here is useful and informative and improves the workplace culture and relationships. And my hope is that if you can only take away one nugget of information, that it is impactful in the world, in your world, and those around you. So during this pandemic, how many of you and or those around you have felt fully engaged? In other words, how many of you have been firing at all 4 cylinders? Now, most people I have talked to, whether they be clients or organizations or in talks like this, have said many of them have been feeling very low engagement. And the cost of disengagement is really staggering to us personally and to those around us. And research indicates that just in the U.S., the cost of disengagement is anywhere between $200 to $250 billion a year. Now, the Gallup organization estimates that 1 in 4 people in the workforce is truly engaged, and 1 in 6 or 7 is actually actively disengaged. Now, let's just use a sports analogy. If only 25% of the hockey team or soccer team or whatever team of preference you have was engaged, what is their likelihood to win the cup? The cost of disengagement is too expensive for us to not do something about. And the percentage of engaged employees in both the U.S. and globally is gradually improving, which is great, but not fast enough to fix performance and the growing mental health challenges. Now, while every highly engaged organization has its own unique approach, the following common themes emerged. Culture change was initiated by the CEO and the board. They transformed managers from boss to coach, and they practiced highly effective company-wide communication. And they also held managers accountable for engagement and performance. We are on the other side of this huge mountain called COVID, and we're getting closer and closer to the finishing line. And think of the life we knew before COVID as BC, so before COVID. And the life we are evolving into is AC, in other words, after COVID. And what are the changes that we have undergone that stay with us after COVID? And how will it change the way we live our lives? So for instance, working from home may be the new normal. Zoom has a new way of interacting, or is a new way of interacting. And maybe personal PPE may be the new fashion style on the runway. And how are relationships and engagements with our coworkers and our friends and our loved ones different now and moving forward? The reality is there is no going back. So how can you create an environment within yourself and your organization which embraces change? In other words, how are you relating? It is time like this where creative mindsets are more important than ever. And this isn't the first time that the world and companies have undergone significant change. In fact, some of the most successful businesses have been built and or thrived during depressions, recessions, Wall Street meltdowns, pandemics, etc., all because of a creative mindset and being responsive versus reactive. But when there is a dynamic of drama in the space, it does not foster an environment where change is embraced and psychological safety is felt. So the intended outcome of today's talk is to bring awareness of when we may show up in a dynamic of drama and how we can learn to shift into an environment that empowers ourselves and others to healthier communication and psychological safety. So without further ado, let's review the second question in the 3VQ model, and that is, how are you relating? So how are you relating? Does the way of relating for teams and organizations produce or perpetuate drama? Or do they empower others, teams, and the organization to be resourceful, resilient, creative, and innovative? Now, that the problem mindset tends to foster and perpetuate the roles of victim, persecutor, and rescuer. All roles that cause people to become disenchanted and disengaged. And interactions are primarily problem-focused, anxiety fear-based, and reactive in nature. And in the outcome mindset, there is an increased capacity of individuals, teams, and organizations to feel safe to create, positively challenge, and coach. And this results in new and engaging ways of communicating, which in turn fosters nurturing, trusting relationships and relating to one another that are co-creative, resourceful, resilient, and innovative. So this was supposed to have been what I was clicking onto. Okay, so are you relating? So that's the second question. So recall the mindset model where there was the problem. So this is what I talked about last week. The mindset model where there was a problem mindset and an outcome mindset. And last week, I talked about the story of my military scuba diving course and reviewed with you how, if I looked at deciding on taking this course with a problem mindset, how I would have chosen. And And then when I only focused on the problems, which was my claustrophobia and not really being a big fan of the water, I would feel anxious and would react to my fears. And this would keep me in what's called drama. Drama-filled mindset of fear and negativity. And when I focused on the desired outcome of becoming Atlantic Canada's very first female military scuba diver, I focused on my passions and took baby steps to see the achievements I was making along the way. And this kept me in an empowerment mindset. And this story really shows you how your mindset can define your reality. So for the purpose of the second vital questions, where are you putting your focus? We're going to change the names of these mindsets. So the problem mindset will now be called the victim mindset, where we listen to more of our fears and what I call our inner critic, where we are victims to the problems we are reacting to. And then let's just switch the outcome mindset is now going to be called the creator or champion mindset, where we are creating from the situation with a champion mindset and taking baby steps and creating outcomes and choosing our responses to the situation. So I want to talk now about the relationships that thrive in both of these mindsets. What are the relationships that thrive in the victim mindset, and what are the relationships that thrive in the creator or champion mindset? So as I mentioned, the problem mindset, which is now called the victim mindset, is, if for no other reason than people feel victimized by problems and situations that arrive in their lives. When feeling victimized by their situations, they naturally relate through what is called the dreaded drama dynamic. Now, in the 1960s, Dr. Stephen Cartman first described the three reactive and problem-focused roles of the victim, the persecutor, and the rescuer. And then he named the drama triangle. That's what he named the drama triangle. Sometimes it's called the Cartman drama triangle. Now, the dreaded drama triangle, it's a little bit of a tongue twister, so I'm just going to call it the DDT, includes three roles. There's the victim, the rescuer, and the persecutor. And those roles can be found both internally and externally. And each of us have all three DDT roles operating inside of us. And the roles of the DDT are aligned with three ways children respond to fear. One is moving away, which is the victim. Another one is moving toward, which is rescuing. And the other one is pushing against, which is the persecutor. And the antidote to the DDT is what is called the empowerment dynamic. And there are also three roles in this dynamic: the creator, the challenger, and the coach. So the question now becomes, which voice do you tune into? And think of it this way: your thoughts are like radio signals that operate at different frequencies and volumes. And your mind acts like an antenna that latches onto certain waves. So the DDT roles are tuned into a radio frequency that screeches and shouts at you and uses fear to motivate and get your attention. And the empowerment dynamic roles are tuned to a station of empowerment, resourcefulness, and resilience. It has a quality of truth and well-being, even when life is challenging. And this is more of a whisper on the radio, which is your softer intuition that will guide you if you pause long enough to listen. So let's dig a little bit deeper into each of the characters in both of these dynamics. So first we're going to talk about the characters in the DDT. So the central character in the DDT in this model is the victim. And it is the victim who feels hopeless and powerless to their circumstances and often relinquishes their responsibility for creating what they want. And as I said, this is more of a move away strategy that is adopted. And the victim feels powerless and helpless. And the victim is typically unwilling to take responsibility for what happens in a situation and may blame others for their misfortunes. So some language that we may hear from the victim is things like, this sucks, why is this happening to me, there's nothing I can do. Now, we would spend a lot more time in my courses to dig deeper and bring awareness around the DDT, when the DDT shows up in our lives. And there are normally huge aha moments in this part of the work where people, teams, and organizations discover how they are relating to themselves and to others. Now, often there are triggers, or what I call hot buttons, which I'll discuss the next time we have a chance to chat. That when we pause long enough to notice and name those triggers, it can radically help with being proactive with how we will choose and to behave the next time. Now, one thing I want to note here is that there is a distinction between victimization and victimhood. All people have been victims to experiences from time to time, and that can range from small paper cuts in life to extreme trauma. Now, what I'm talking about here is different which is it's victimhood, which is a self-identity and a way of being in life, no matter what the situation. Now, in order to be a victim, one must have the persecutor. And the persecutor is the problem to the victim. And it is this characteristic or role that uses control and domination to take charge. And here's the reality. They fear being the victim themselves, so what they do is that they put down and criticize to protect themselves from becoming a victim. And often the persecutor is a person, but it can also be a situation, a condition, or circumstance that dominates the time and attention of the victim. And very often, this person, it can be our own inner critic. So this is the push against strategy that is adopted. And it's common to see others as persecutors, but here's the reality and here's the truth, is that we all slip into a persecutor role from time to time, whether we wish to admit it or not. And it is one of the ways we humans try to control uncomfortable situations. By becoming more familiar with different faces of the persecutor, hopefully you can catch yourself and shift to a more constructive way of relating. So here's just a few examples of the faces we have observed of others and how others are affected. So here's some names that I created for different persecutors. One is the sergeant. So the sergeant is one that micromanages with it's my way or the highway mentality. And coworkers or family members fear making mistakes or stop thinking for themselves. And opportunities for innovation or new ideas are limited for fear that they will run head on into the sergeant's strong opinion of right and wrong thinking. And then there is the critic. And the critic uses their cranky and critical mood to control the family or work environment. And others walk on eggshells to avoid setting them off. And control is gained because others spend a lot of time and energy paying attention to their criticism. And then there is the silent one, the passive aggressive. And it uses silence to control and punish by withdrawing and cutting off interaction to control the situation and other people. And this creates powerlessness in others as they try to figure out how to react to the silent treatment. There's also the manipulator who may schmooze and relate to others to win their influence, and their motivation is questionable. And they may work with hidden agendas. And so they may befriend those who serve their agenda and then shun those that don't, and creating suspicion and mistrust. And last but not least is the cynic. Oops, I've done this again. Is the cynic. And the cynic uses misplaced humor and sarcasm as a way to subtly subtly belittling and staying one up. And this may leave others confused and bewildered on how to react, and they often see through the inauthenticity of the satire. Well, the desire to be in control can show up differently depending on the situation, and that is why we call this the many faces of the persecutor, all of which are attempting to control the drama in which they are embroiled. So whatever the face when you live inside the persecutor role, there is a strong desire to control and manage the situation. And very importantly, these are roles we and other people play when uncomfortable in the situation. And there might be language as well. I'm having a hard time, I apologize. There we go. And there may be language of blame and control, like this is your fault, why did you do it like that, what's the matter with you? So that is sort of the role of the persecutor. Okay, let's go on to the rescuer. So the third role in the DDT is the rescuer. And the rescuer role is the pain reliever and or the fixer in the drama triangle. And again, this can be a person, place, thing, or situation. And this role in the DDT focuses on those who need help, or so the rescuer interprets. So if you are stuck in the rescuer role, you may deny that you have any needs, and your internal dialogue may be, I would rather be helpful to others and fix the world's problems than focus on my own needs. Now, there are three central misconceptions that explain the rescuer's focus on others and their circumstances. When the rescuer, so number one, when in the rescuer role, the deep longing is that by helping others, you will someday get your own needs met. And the rescuers are proud to be a helper and fixer of others' problems. And inwardly, the rescuer loves being a hero and believes that this is the only way that they can feel worthwhile as a human being. And eventually, others will love them for their good deeds and being so helpful, and the ultimate fear is ending up alone and not being needed. And another misconception is rescuers believe that ultimately, a victim will learn to take responsibility for their own needs. And the rescuer sees the victim as temporarily unable to take care of themselves, which justifies their intervention and can unknowingly create a cycle of disempowerment for the person in the victim role. But why should the victim take responsibility if the rescuer is going to do it for them? So the more the rescuer intervenes, the less accountable those in the victim role will be in their own life. And the other misconception is rescuers fail to recognize how they become a magnet for more victims. So when the rescuer, in the rescuer role, it is amazing how often one attracts needy people. The person playing the victim role may say to you, I really need your help because no one else can fix it like you can. And this is music to the ears of a rescuer. And you may become unconscious to how often you scan the environment looking for people who need your help. And this explains why people with a chronic victim mentality are often surrounded by a number of rescuers who maintain their lack of responsibility. And some of the language that we hear in the rescuer role is, I'll take care of it, let me help you, I'll just do it myself. Okay, so now let's talk about the antidote to the DDT, the dreaded drama triangle. And that is called the empowerment dynamic, or TED. And TED also has three main characters. The creator, which is the opposite of the victim, the challenger, which is the opposite of the persecutor, and the coach, which is the opposite of the rescuer. So let's dig a bit deeper into each of the characters in TED. So first one is the creator. And the creator plays the central role in this dynamic. And it is the antidote to the victim. And they operate with an outcome-focused, passion-powered champion mindset. And a creator focuses on their desired outcome and takes responsibility for what is theirs to do. So unlike the victim who feels like life happens to them, the creator says, I can do it, and sees that they greatly influence what happens. And just as importantly, creators own their power and capability to choose their response to whatever situation or experience occurs. So here's an example. Viktor Frankl was a young psychiatrist who spent time in several Nazi concentration camps in World War II. So on the victimization scale of 1 to 10, it was probably about a 12 or 13. Now during that awful experience, Frankl had an epiphany that he credits with allowing him to survive. And in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, this is what he wrote. Everything can be taken away from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Now, this is a creator being a choice. Sometimes the range of choices are very narrow, like this one, and sometimes we have a wide range of choices. And as a creator, we are always at choice, even when we feel victimized. Now, let's move on to the persecutor. The opposite of the persecutor role is the challenger. It is the challenger who calls forth growth and is often a truth teller and a cheerleader. And they positively challenge themselves and or others in high regard. And as a challenger who is a truth teller, they are the source of constructive feedback, and they offer the truth about the current situation or reality. And many challengers are conscious, compassionate, and constructive. And they are those who challenge us to learn, to grow, and to take action in a non-judgmental and inspiring way. So think of those people in your life who have challenged you in this way, like an inspiring boss, a teacher, a public figure, maybe even a character. So even think of Dory from Finding Nemo, where she says, just keep swimming. Or Apollo in Rocky III, where he challenges Rocky, saying there is no tomorrow, and gets him going again. And then the opposite of the rescuer is the coach. And it's the coach who assists the creator in creating outcomes and making choices. The coach asks questions and uses the art of inquiry to create awareness. And this role is a healing role, but does so by seeing the other as a creator, as naturally creative, resourceful, and whole, versus a victim. And the coach does not have to be a professional coach. They are those who facilitate and ask thoughtful questions and help others achieve their goals. And they actively lift and compassionately push others towards success. And common inquiries could include, how will you do it? Or how might you move forward? And the other quality of the coach is that they stay curious without judgment. So if you're not sure if you're in the victim or the creator mindset, there's one sure way to know. The victim voice tends to yell, whether internally and or externally, while our creator voice tends to whisper. And if you notice a name where you are in either of these two dynamics, just notice it without judgment and get curious about it, because right now it's simply a script. And that's the first way to shift to a champion mindset. Also, if you do find yourself in that dreaded drama triangle, just know that you're not alone. As humans, we may unconsciously shift from one dynamic depending on the situation and or triggers that show up for us. And we can also ping pong from being a victim, a rescuer, a persecutor, as well as ping pong from being a creator, a coach, and a challenger. That's the gifts of being a human being. So how do you facilitate shifting mindset? As you make the shift from the dreaded drama triangle, the DDT, to the empowerment dynamic, TED, you are upgrading your internal mindset by adopting a creator mindset. So in the victim role, there is deficiency story of not feeling enough or insufficient. And when living as a creator, you upgrade your deficiency story to a creator story. And this upgrade is not a small shift. In fact, it may be the most profound shift you make in your life because it will alter your relationship with yourself, your loved ones, your co-workers, and all who touch your life. So how does one shift from reacting to choosing and from deficiency to sufficiency? You begin first by affirming your true essence as resourceful, creative, and a whole human being. And you also uphold those with the same of these same qualities as all others, viewing them as co-creators as well. So let me just tell you a little story. There's a story about two young twin brothers who walked into a barn with their grandfather. And one boy complained about the foul-smelling manure and ran out of the barn while complaining about getting manure on his shoes. And the other boy raced through the barn with excitement and yelled to his grandfather, "With all this manure, there must be a pony somewhere." So what's interesting about this model is how powerfully it shows how two different people, or often the same person, can see the exact same situation, and their mindset may result in two very different experiences. One person could see problems, and the other person could see outcomes and opportunities. So the first boy saw himself as a victim with the manure and the foul smell, and the second boy saw the manure and linked it to greater possibilities. So again, how do you shift your mindset if you feel yourself on the left-hand side of this picture? Now, I want to note one thing. While we may want to, we cannot always change the mindset of others, unfortunately. But we can learn to shift our own. And when we do that, we can start to create an environment and culture shift where being in the empowerment dynamic is acceptable. And just like herd immunity, we can herd others to make that mindset shift as well. Now, we can't make an outward shift until such time as we can make an internal shift. So to shift from victim to creator requires a mindset shift from focusing on what we don't want, which is focusing on the problems, to focusing on what we do want, which is focusing on the outcomes. So what do you want? One of the most powerful questions to ask yourself and to ask others. Now, in the victim mindset, the attention goes to the problem, and it goes to what is it that we don't want, and it focuses on everything that we say after the words yes, but. And most times we focus on what we don't want because we are trying to get rid of or get away from the anxiety we feel or the hot buttons that we see as a problem. And we want to take it out of reality for us and out of that discomfort zone. Now, in the creator mindset, the attention goes towards the outcome and what we do want. And this focuses on everything we say after the words yes and. And in this mindset, we are focused on the outcome, and our intention is to move toward what we do want and what we do want to bring into being. So how do we shift from rescuer to coach? We will not shift externally until we shift internally, as I mentioned. So again, when it comes to being a rescuer, we may hear ourselves saying, you know, we want to fix somebody. We are telling versus asking. We're using a lot of judgment. And I must save him, or I must rescue. And if I don't do it, if I do this, then I'll be worthy. Or I feel sorry for the other person. These are some of the languages and some of the mindsets that a rescuer has. Now, in the coach mentality, the coach mindset, the coach sees themselves and others as naturally creative, resourceful, and full. And there's a lot of compassion and curiosity and non-judgment. And they see them as a person, and they see themselves as a person versus an object or some sort of a perfectionist robot. And they tend to use a lot of inquiry and curiosity questions to help others and to help themselves. And then is facilitating the shift. How do you facilitate the shift from persecutor to challenger? Well, that starts with seeing the other person, as I mentioned, as naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. And you can see them, let's go to the persecutor first, is that how do you shift from controlling to compassion and shift from putting down to building and learning? And then when you get into the positive challenger mode, what has this person, condition, or situation come into my life to teach me? And again, the mindset is very much in a curious mode versus a judgment in an inner critic mode. And also, how can I grow and develop from this situation? Knowing that I can't always control what is happening to me, yet at the same time, how can I learn from the experiences that I have? Now, that was a lot of information in terms of shifting and facilitating shift. But I do have a one-pager that I'm happy to send to you, and I think Doug's got the link. So when he sends you the video, there's going to be a link on the video or in the email as well that will send you to this one-pager. So you can actually have this to take a look at and refer to when you're wanting to shift from a victim mindset to a champion mindset, wanting to shift from victim to creator, from persecutor to challenger, and from rescuer to coach. So you don't need to memorize everything that I just said. So in summary, let's all face the fact that we are all human and have operated at least once in our lives in the dreaded drama triangle. And you may have heard the adage that what you resist persists. So when you're in the DDT roles, or when your DDT roles appear, it is an opportunity to observe old patterns with curiosity that have persisted and may have once served you, but now are outdated and ineffective. And just by noticing and naming without judgment what your DDT roles, you will gain new clues into your own brilliant behavior that evolved in response to earlier life challenges. So rather than avoiding your DDT roles, the victim, the persecutor, or the rescuer, and wishing they would just simply go away, embrace the drama as evidence of something new that wants to emerge. So when you feel powerless in a situation and notice that the victim mentality is bubbling up inside, rather than resist it, tell yourself that you shouldn't feel this way. Allow yourself to notice the situation and just get curious about it. This is a lot of work that I do with many individual clients. And try to understand, like, what triggered the feeling? What was the situation or the person or the condition? Is this a reoccurring pattern or a one-time event? And what might this sense of victimization be telling you? And when you feel the persecutor energy emerge, you may need to legitimately defend or protect yourself or another, like a mama bear protecting her cubs, fending off a threat that may be the most appropriate response to that situation. So identifying what you're willing to fight for can tell you about your deepest values. And when the rescuer in you shows up, and you feel the desire to insert yourself into areas that are not your business, what does this say about your relationships and what you really care about? So ask yourself, is my desire to rescue hinged upon my hope that others will say nice things about me? And if so, your rescuing behavior is about you, rather than the good deed you plan to do. And this distinction is essential to understand what can make the difference between helping others so they will think well of you, or because you would generally want to be of service. So that is an overview of the dreaded drama triangle and of the empowerment dynamic. And I could have gotten into a whole lot more. What I will do is, we have a little bit more time, so I'm going to just talk to you very quickly about the hot buttons as well. And I can talk a little bit more in reference to this next time as well. So very quickly, if you are looking for information, please feel free to reach out to me at info@changechamp.ca or go to my website at changechamp.ca. So here's some of the hot buttons that, that you want to be mindful of when it comes to certain triggers that might be showing up in your life. So it could be people who are unreliable or overly analytical or unappreciative or aloof or micromanaging or self-centered or abrasive, untrustworthy or hostile. And these hot buttons might pull us into that dreaded drama triangle. So just notice it and name it and get curious about it. And again, we could spend a whole lot more time and get more analytical on this in courses and programs that I do. But that gives you an idea of what some of the hot buttons could potentially be when you find yourself in those dreaded drama triangles. So I want to take this time now to thank you and let you also know that on July the 21st, we'll be talking about the third question, which is, what actions am I taking? So thank you so much for all of your participation and engagement.
And thank you, Anne-Marie. This has been, as one of the people posted, this has been eye-opening.
Good.
And we've got just a few questions coming in. One of the questions that you might be answering in your next talk, I don't know, is if you change and you change your role, what happens if those around you resist the change in you because they are comfortable the way things were?
Yeah, and it's interesting. That's usually one of the questions that are typically asked in that. So as I mentioned, and I should almost put it on the slide, a huge note is that we cannot control other people's actions and level of resistance. And the interesting thing is when we get curious about that, what is it that they're resisting? What is typically what they're resisting is the discomfort that they're feeling that either A, they can no longer rescue you, B, that you're not a victim anymore, or that their persecutor role is no longer effective. So this is, again, very interesting to notice that your internal culture is changing, yet there's resistance on the outside. And that is typical. We all want certainty in life, and just like with this pandemic, it's created a lot of discomfort for us. So there are going to be people that are going to want to dig the heels in and want resistance. And at the same time, that is outside of your control. What is within your control is changing your own mindset to a champion mindset. And just like any evolution, that over time, that resistance is either going to break down and they're going to shift, or they're going to walk. And both ones could be of service to you.
Okay, it's a good answer. I think you answered one from Orlando. He said, when we are in a toxic environment, how do we deal with it? I think you did a really good job explaining how do you move away from that. There's another question from David, though. He says, well, first he says, I love the descriptions of the roles. If one is self-reflective, then this should be self-prescriptive as to how to change one's perspective and role. But how would you go about helping someone who is not self-reflective to know their role, and what could they be instead? So it sounds like David's being a little bit of a rescuer here, but how would you answer that?
Great observing, Doug. So first of all, I think it comes back to the first question. Number one is, do they even want to change? Is there again, it depends on the situation. You know, is it in a work culture? Is it in a family? Is it in a relationship? And here's the thing is that let's just look at this from an example of a work environment. And I always say that an organization, I think I may have said this the last time, an organization is like an organism. And it's a living, breathing entity. and the culture of the organization is the soul of the organization. And shifting culture can sometimes be like turning a destroyer in a bathtub. It takes a lot of time, and it takes a level of evolution that sometimes you don't notice until you reflect back. So my point is that we can't force anybody to make changes. All we can do is set examples and lead the herd in culture change. So I guess my answer to this is focus on what you can control and what is within your control. And eventually, when people see that as the acceptable behavior, they're going to want to get on the bandwagon too, or they're going to go on to another bandwagon that, again, might serve them. So again, it serves both of you if that happens.
Okay, thank you. That's a good answer. So Stephanie asks the question, is it a good environment when a higher level manager plays the curious coach all the time?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah, Stephanie, perhaps you could explain in the chat. What do you mean by curious coach? They're always asking you questions or trying to see what's going on with you, or what? She may post something there.
Okay. I think I know, but I just want to make sure I'm clear. So maybe we'll just pause on that one if there's another question.
Okay, sure. And when I said David was a rescuer, he posts, "Oh yeah, guilty."
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah. Okay. Yeah, we're getting a lot of people who are saying that this is just an inspiring talk.
Oh, wonderful.
Phenomenal information. Okay. And I have been placing to in the window some of the links to the your empowerment guide and the slides. Everyone else, you will get links to those from the email in 48 hours. Okay. So don't panic if you don't see it right away.
And I just want to say too, as I mentioned, that this is there's so much depth here that this is such a surface level discussion when it comes to shifting culture and shifting mindset. And one thing I always want to leave you with is that take one nugget, and just one nugget, and just get curious and deepen the learning around that one nugget. Because shifting culture, it's like learning, well, I said this the last time, it's like learning a new language. So anybody that was in my talk last time, it was like me saying, okay, if everybody here is native tongue is English, all I want you to do is, starting tomorrow, I want you to start speaking Mandarin. I've given you the slides, now go speak it. And it sounds like a ridiculous thing, right? We take one little word in Mandarin and we might deepen that to understand it. And even if we do understand the language, doesn't necessarily mean it's ingrained into our culture, our internal culture yet. And that takes time before we wake up thinking and sleeping Mandarin. So it's the same thing with culture shift. It takes a lot of time. It's not an overnight fix. It's not a one and done. It's an ongoing evolution.
Okay. We've got a question that's maybe related to quality culture. When the quality culture is one of quality is a regulator, when compared to quality is an integral part of the company processes, what is the best approach to move from regulator to integral part? What do you think would be a good way to do that using this sort of technique?
Wow, good question. I'm not as familiar with quality regulator. That sounds like it's an external, like a process or policy.
Well, I think I can interpret that a little bit.
Yeah.
When an organization views quality as a regulator, they say quality makes our results good. Okay. And then the quality people are seen as the drivers of quality. But when you say quality is an internal part, that means no, quality is done by everyone, okay? And the quality folks are more guiding, not driving. And that's a culture difference in an organization.
Yeah. Well, and even just notice the language around that, right? So there's policies and procedures, and then there's culture. And again, just notice, though, think about like there's boundaries and there's, you know, there's kind of rules and behaviors that we want to abide by in a family or within our own being. And it's the same type of thing within an organization. There's still boundaries and you know, practices that we abide by. And then internally, it's kind of like there's the feeling and the doing. There's the being and the doing. So the doing is the quality, what do you call it, procedures. And then there is the internal culture, and that is the being. That is the way people feel. That is the way they are in their internal drive. They're in, you know, their internal thought process. So it feels a little bit of a different discussion in both of them. And again, it takes a little bit more time to really deepen that without giving kind of, it seems like it's going to be a longer answer than just being able to say, oh, it's this, and period.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Somebody suggested you should write a book on this. They would buy it. You've got a book in you, I think. So one final question I want to ask here. What's the most toxic role that you can picture in an organization? What's the most toxic role that you've seen in organizations?
Wow, boy, these are really amazing questions. I've done different organizations with different types of organizations, and I think that, gee, I'm just trying to think if I can roll it up into one, and I'm going to say the one that stops people from being their true, authentic selves. And here's the thing, like the #1 soft skill that organizations look for is creativity. And we can't be creative without our pure authenticity, without psychological safety. And if we don't feel safe in an environment, we're going to close up, we're going to follow the herd, and we're not going to be able to positively disrupt and challenge the status quo. And when that happens, we are not being able to thrive as an organization to our full extent.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We appreciate your time and your answers. We're gonna stop here and remind everybody they'll receive an email after the talk. So